I watched Andrea's coverage of this particular story yesterday, and so far I'm 4 minutes in on the majority report, and Andrea, I think he did a better job of covering this story so far, because every time I watch the majority report, Sam seems like he doesn't know what he's talking about unless he's reading notes, and even then, he often has to get prompted by the guy in the background who I think is the producer, Bradley, right? He's the one who is probably Googling things while this is going on. But let's cover this. And then I'm going to probably flip to your video too.
There are these hearings going on, ostensibly called the weaponization of government hearings. At one point, they were trying to pretend like this was like the church commission hearings. Mm-hmm. But this is all about like how conservatives are maligned in social media. Mm-hmm. There are legitimate concerns that government officials have been trying to, without doing so through a regulatory framework, but more like pick up the phone and go after whatever their particular pet peeves are. We know that Angus King up in Maine did this. I think Schiff did it. We know that Kevin McCarthy did it. We know that the president of the United States, not the current one, but the former one, Donald Trump, did this.
Okay.
It's wrong. They're leveraging the ability of government to regulate and using it for their own personal sort of like vendettas or whatever they think is important to keep quiet. Now, I think a lot of these conservatives are also complaining that like there was pressure to not have disinformation about COVID during a pandemic there.
Most politicians have press contacts that they leak things to. That's not, sorry, I'm in a sneezing fit. That's not all that uncommon. I don't think it's great, but it's not all that uncommon that they try and leak things to the press. But if you have a major news story, it really should go to multiple press outlets. And in the cases that I've seen it happen locally, I think they usually do contact several press outlets, and it's up to them, up to the press, whether they want to actually cover the story or not. But this is what this story is about, is leaking it only specifically to one specific journalist.
Et cetera, et cetera. But just like you would inhibit the ability of Google or AOL back in the day to allow for pedophile groups because it's bad for society, even though they're not necessarily in that act of talking about it, doing anything illegal. You'd want to encourage them to shut those groups down, et cetera, et cetera. You might do the same thing during a pandemic. But the bottom line is there needs to be a lot more regulation. But some people are purposely missing the story. Now, when we first talked about Matt Taibbi being handed files from Elon Musk, it really appeared like he was just doing a PR job for Musk, because you're not really reporting on the story of how government has interfered or pressured or worked with Twitter, or for that matter, corporations, which corporations are doing it all the time as well. Why should we allow massive corporations to dictate? Well, I mean, that's the nature of that business. But
well, there's a big difference, and this is why I stopped to actually do a react video to it. There is a big difference between government doing this because they are civil servants who we've elected, or they are agencies that are under the elected officials who we elected. These are people who are supposed to be, it's a public enterprise in that regard, that it's supposed to be serving the people, whereas corporations are private. Corporations are private, so they are going to operate in a different manner than government because they are bound to um, their shareholders, and they have marketing strategies, but they don't exist as as a way to serve the public that way. They exist to sell a product or service, um, and make money for their shareholders. These are different concepts. There is a much greater responsibility for government to operate properly, like government officials, to operate properly and to deliver this information equally to all press outlets.
Um, it's not really reporting unless you're like giving a sense of the actual breadth of the story.
Or reporting on the actual government officials involved. I keep returning to this point.
He did mention in a half a sentence.
Yes.
The amazing thing is, in this hearing, his response about that was actually longer than the reporting.
We should clarify what it was, right? I mean,
Well, and the problem with what Elon Musk did here is that the information that he was releasing to Matt Taibbi referred to elected officials. It was referring to the election. It referred to people involved with running for office. If this was more related to his company itself, then that would be a different story. But if he's trying to use his position as a corporate leader to influence politics, then that's where the crossover occurs and it becomes unethical.
Donald Trump was in a conversations with Twitter trying to get, working with their content moderation people. We don't know what what that was because he refused to report on it. Biden, not in the White House yet, not in government yet, still a campaign, was trying to get the revenge porn of his son taken down, and that's the big thing that started this off.
Right.
Here is, and this is really embarrassing because, what's her face?
See, I mean, come on. Come on, man. You've been a commentator for how many fucking years? I think he said like 2 decades, and you can't remember Debbie Wasserman Schultz's name? What is going on with you? Do you just are you so uninterested in your job that you can't remember big names like that? Like, that's a big fucking name. How many people have we tried to run against her at this point? Tim Canova, and then he dropped out of the party and made a fool of himself and became a conspiracy theorist. Then he had Jen Perlman, and you know her. She is co-hosted with Jordan Sheridan for like at least a year or so, or more than that probably. Like, this is my example. I mean, I have several examples, but this is my example of how Sam Seder doesn't know shit about politics. And so the idea that he is somehow a debate wizard is fucking crazy to me.
This is Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She was the most hated and incompetent DNC chair we've ever had. Even the people, like the Obama administration.
Do you remember why? Do you remember why, Sam? Do you remember why?
I'm pretty sure this has since been reported. The Obama administration, which had her in there, they didn't want to deal with getting her out, but she was just horribly incompetent.
She's a joke.
Why?
And to have her be the one, like, it is really sad that someone this incompetent can make you look so...
Are they going to do it? Are they going to talk about, like, what the problem was with her? Oh, my God, even. Okay, so Debbie Wasserman Schultz, when WikiLeaks came out with the first dump of emails, the DNC leak, it was revealed that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was assisting Hillary Clinton to skew the primary race in her favor, and to push down Bernie. They were doing unfair things to Bernie's campaign, in order, like, for instance, Hillary got pick of the debate schedule during the primary. They came after Bernie for his campaign was accidentally given access to some of her data at the DNC, and they penalized him for that, despite the fact that it was of no fault of the campaign. There were internal emails that were just like openly cackling about the fact that they were going to help Hillary win and make Bernie lose. Like, this was like openly discussed in emails that got dumped right before the DNC convention in 2016. Are you really going to breeze past this?
So bad, so easily. Some people suggest that maybe she watched this show because we played this clip of Taibbi on Rogan. But this is not even the worst of it. But here, play this, because this is important to show just how sort of like sad Taibbi's performance here was.
And just to clarify, this is the Judiciary Committee now.
Oh, it's the Judiciary Committee.
Oversight.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was just Jim Jordan's on
baby.
both.
Yeah, he's on
so
both. That's why Taibbi thinks.
Oh, okay. She watched your show to find out about this. Really? I mean, there's a lot of live streamers that have covered it. So, but she watched your show. I mean, oftentimes you guys come across as so unintelligent that I don't think she's coming to you for information. There are live streamers all over the country who covered the story, who covered it more intelligently than you all have.
Jim Jordan for the invitation.
Right.
Journalistic ethics and information sources. The Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics asserts that journalists should avoid political activities that can compromise integrity or credibility. Being a Republican witness today certainly casts a cloud over your objectivity. But a deeper concern that I have relates to the ethics of how journalists receive and present certain information. Journalists should avoid accepting spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it depends.
Really? You wouldn't agree that a journalist should avoid spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion?
Congresswoman, I've done probably a dozen stories involving whistleblowers. Every reported story that I've ever done across 3 decades involves sources who have motives. Every time you do a story, you're making a balancing test.
Okay. Reclaiming
Pause it
public.
for a
Reclaiming my
second.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
now listen. I actually think that is a somewhat legitimate response here by Taibbi. I'll take.
It's a legitimate response if you're reporting the information in context. In context. That I received this information directly, and I apparently am the only reporter who has received it, and this is what it says, and I like put it in context. And the thing is that you got to talk about how he slanted the information and used it to demonize one party of people, and really it was not put in correct context.
Sources from this person I know who's heavily motivated and interested in presenting only one side. If I'm going out and doing a whole host of other reporting, the balancing act is not just should I take it or should I not. It is, am I getting the whole story? What else am I doing to get the whole story? I'm going to take from a source. The issue isn't that you shouldn't just.
Yeah, it's not like he went out and asked for statements from the people involved. He didn't ask for statements of the people involved. He didn't cross-check the information. You know, he didn't do his due diligence as a journalist to actually, make it an investigative reporting situation. because you're supposed to at least have two sources, and you're supposed to get statements from the people who are being accused of things.
Shouldn't take stuff that you think is cherry picked and spoon fed to present a specific slant. The issue is you shouldn't turn around and present that as if it's the story.
And where is it presented, Sam?
Do your reporting to essentially like, is there more to the story?
Yeah.
Do it like understanding that I'm only getting one narrow perspective. Then if I put it out as if it's the story, then I'm doing a disservice to the story. If you take a picture of an elephant's anus and go out and say, this is an elephant, that's it. Then all of a sudden, like, you're not telling the story of an elephant. You're just telling the story of a specific, and
that's a very bizarre, very bizarre comparison. Was that written for you, or did you just come up with that? Oh my God, even.
Aside, in addition to the fact that it's so cherry picked and obviously self-serving, and we know that Taibbi, all he did was to go through the stuff that he had. And he certainly emphasized some things more than others. But the point is, he didn't have the whole picture.
I think he fancied that he was acting like WikiLeaks, except in a much safer situation, because he was getting the information from a willing source that he knew that there's no repercussions for the source who was leaking it, which was Elon Musk, right? So it's not like the same situation as like a Chelsea Manning or a Snowden. Those people took extreme risks to bring information to the American public. And so in that case, yeah, you probably have to only give it to one source because you're trying to hide your identity, because you had access to sensitive documents and you leaked them. That's a totally, like, also, like, if you go back to the 70s, the papers that basically blew open the Vietnam situation. Those are genuine leakers. Elon Musk wasn't leaking anything in regard, like, it was announced. It came out. It totally fell flat. And by the way, I've put on Twitter that I'm probably going to leave because he's removing two-factor authorization from any account that isn't a blue check. So now you have to pay to have two-factor authorization on Twitter. He's destroying the platform. It's gone. Like, it already, the news feed already looks terrible as it is because of all the changes that he's made. But if he's going to make it an unsafe platform, I'm not going to participate in something like that because, like, I have too much in my work history to put accounts at risk like that.
He needs to go out and get all of the stuff, or he needs to go out and find out other sides of the story.
And it should give him a tip-off really easily if he's a well-respected journalist, award-winning journalist like Republicans were trying to paint him as, who would be above, who has the integrity on this front, that the source in this instance is both the CEO of the company he's attempting to blow the lid off of, and also seemingly asking him to publish it on the platform Twitter itself, which should be, that's not typical sourcing that you're dealing with there.
Well, no, of course. He knew. On
that note, like, I just think, like, this idea where we have to act like Elon Musk, a guy who was financed by giant banks in the Saudis for a hostile takeover of a major comms platform in advance of an election, like, we have to act like this guy's a whistleblower. That's, like, damaging to this entire, like, this free society that Taibbi is supposedly, like, speaking on behalf of. Well, and, like, if this was...
Well, I'm glad, Bradley, that you're at least recognizing that, because it does seem like a lot of people who are claiming themselves to be progressive are actually doing the bidding of corporations by tearing down the very people who would defend us in government. It's such hypocrisy what's been going on with live streaming, with the journalists that, like, Glenn Greenwald totally fell flat on us. Matt Taibbi has fallen flat on us. It's really sad that there are very few sources that we can actually trust now.
True. If Elon Musk was genuine about what Taibbi says, he's like, oh, he just wants to, like, clean up the government interference stuff. Go to the ICIJ, the International Consortium of Independent Journalists, who were doing the Panama Papers. You don't go to this handpicked, like, Taibbi and Schellenberger MD, and the MD means Michael D. Like, this is a joke.
Yeah, I mean, give me a break. I mean, the idea that that Elon Musk is to be compared with whistleblowers, what a joke.
Yeah.
What a joke. But continue, because the funny part comes up here, and it actually gets worse after this clip.
Foregone, easily disputed or invalid conclusion?
Congresswoman, I've done probably a dozen stories involving whistleblowers. Every reported story that I've ever done across 3 decades involves sources who have motives.
Involved.
Every time you do a story,
Involved. Not
you're
exclusively.
making a balancing test
Okay,
between the public
reclaiming my
interest.
time. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I ask you this because before you became Elon Musk's hand-picked journalist, and pardon the oxymoron, you stated this on Joe Rogan's podcast about being spoon-fed information, and I quote, I think that's true of any kind of journalism, and you'll see it behind me here. I think that's true of any kind of journalism. Once you start getting handed things, then you've lost. They have you at that point, and you got to get out of that habit. You just can't cross that line. Do you still believe what you told Mr. Rogan? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Good. Now, you crossed that line with the Twitter files.
No.
Elon Musk, it's my time. Please do not interrupt me. Elon Musk spoon-fed you his cherry-picked information, which you must have suspected promotes a slanted viewpoint, or at the very least generates another right-wing conspiracy theory. You violated your own standard, and you appear to have benefited from it.
All right. Now,
Let's also just make a point here that despite the fact that Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to resign from the DNC in disgrace once those emails were released, and they're just breezing past it. They're breezing past it. These are two different roles, right? There is the role of being in charge of the party, basically, which that's like the highest party position you can have is the leader of the DNC. And there's the role of being a Congress person, being the House representative. Her district loves her. And that's why it has been so difficult for progressives to try and get in there and challenge her. Because her district is very happy with the way she performs as a congressperson. And that's a completely different role from DNC. She didn't work out as a DNC chair. She didn't work out. But in regards to representing her district, her representatives are happy with her.
pretty low-hanging fruit because he did violate his own standard. And we played that clip of him saying that on Joe Rogan, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. But what makes it even worse is because he wants the opportunity to contextualize what he said there on Joe Rogan. And he's given it by a Republican. Said there on Joe Rogan, and he's given it by a Republican lawmaker. And the idea, though, that like he cannot even acknowledge that in this instance he did violate his own standard. And let's make this clear. Not only did he violate his standard in terms of like what information he was getting and from where, but that was the whole story. He may have done subsequent reporting, we don't know. But he put it out there on the main platform where it was going to be seen. And the whole story was just only the Twitter files. It wasn't the limited Twitter files. They had a whole branding campaign, right? The Twitter files.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like the Panama Files if it was just like, oh, we only took it from specific people? We were handed it from a
Yeah, it was absolutely like a PR campaign, and it was a really odd time to do it too, because like I mean, the only thing that's going on right now, we're in an off year. The only thing that's going on right now is potentially some special elections, maybe some judge elections, stuff like that. So it was, Elon Musk is so bad at marketing that he doesn't even know when is the appropriate time to drop information. And realistically, if he wanted to actually really impact politics, he would have dropped that in the weeks leading up to a massive election, like a primary election or a general election or a midterm election. He would have dropped it at that point. But the dude is so bad at running businesses that he doesn't even know how to strategically use information.
banker who wanted to maybe arrest, one of his clients. Those aren't the Panama Files. He knew how narrow what he was getting was.
I mean, Jim Jordan,
the source.
Jim Jordan, who leads this committee, tweeted out before the election, Kanye, Trump, Elon, right? Like, the idea that this wasn't a politically motivated thing is just, it's an insult to people's intelligence.
But again, you can get a source. You get sources who are politically motivated, who have an agenda all the time. But unless you're going to be a mouthpiece for them, this is one of the things we've criticized Politico for over the years. I'm sure he has too, and he knows it. Unless you're just going to be a mouthpiece for them, you do other reporting around it before you go out and publish it. But he didn't do that. And here's his excuse. He's asked a question by Dan Bishop. Do you want an opportunity to, justify yourself?
Here to respond to the attack on your ethics? You weren't given really an opportunity to answer. And if you'd be brief, I've got a bunch of stuff I want to ask you as well.
Sure, just quickly, that moment on the Joe Rogan show, I was actually recounting a section from Seymour Hersh's book Reporter, where he described a scene where the CIA gave him a story, and he was very uncomfortable. He said that I, who had always gotten the secrets, was being handed the secrets. Look, again, I've done lots of whistleblower stories. There's always a balancing test that you make when you're given material, and you're always balancing newsworthiness versus the motives of your sources. In this case, the newsworthiness clearly outweighed any other considerations, and I think everybody else who worked on the project agreed.
Doesn't it seem like any reporter...
Dude, he seems just as unhinged as when Glenn Greenwald had to leave his publication, The Intercept, because The Intercept refused to print his story about Hunter Biden's laptop. And the thing is, these folks have made it so clear that they're just Republican PR at this point. That, Glenn wrote, a huge ass whiny article about leaving The Intercept, and Matt Taibbi is going down the same path.
Who breaks a blockbuster story is going to get attention.
Pause it for 1 second. So the only standard as to whether you're going to dictate whether you're just going to put one side of the story out there is whether it's newsworthy? I mean, first off, just the idea that he's sort of like saying this is about Cy Hirsch and CIA. He said, I think it applies to any kind of journalism.
Yeah.
In other words, it's not just a CIA situation. That standard applies to any type of journalism. But here's what's amazing about this, is that, and I've said this publicly many times, I think that Taibbi got a raw deal on the reporting about his book, and that he co-wrote while about his time in Russia. And I think he got a raw deal about the accusations. I mean, he without a doubt is I think there's you could say that some of his writing is misogynist, or was at the time, and this and that. But he got a raw deal when it came to the accusations of being accused of behavior towards women in that office.
Are you sure?
I know and I don't think he even did some of that writing, but certainly, without a doubt, his writing was misogynist at times. But the reason why he got a raw deal was because you never heard from the accusers. When they wrote up these stories, you never heard anything from the accusers because there weren't any. And just like it was misinformation in my mind to just like take one angle and present that as the entire truth, that's exactly what Taibbi has done here.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he's done here. And look, it was perfectly newsworthy that Taibbi had co-written this book, but does that justify the angles and the and presenting it as the complete story because it was newsworthy? Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not.
And the Cy Hirsch example is just not analogous, obviously. What this would be analogous to, if he wants to bring it to like a government whistleblower situation, would be if the director of the CIA gave him information and said, well, you're also going to do it as a press release and on our platform on the official CIA website, and you're just going to dump these documents. That would be called a psyop, not reporting.
Here, continue with this.
And there may be even financial consequences that follow. It seems like as surely as the night follows the day, that's the case, right?
That is true, although I would like to clear up, some things that have been misrepresented. Not one of us has actually been paid to do any of this work. We've all, traveled on our own. We've hired our personnel on our own, and I've just hired a pretty large team to investigate this issue.
Oh, right. I'm sure you're not getting anything in exchange, right? Just because it's not on the fucking books doesn't mean that you're not getting some sort of benefit out of doing Elon Musk's bidding.
Yeah,
out of my own pocket.
the fact that the attempt comes from the dais across the aisle to smear you, frankly, I think liberals, if I understand that, in your background, you're both good liberals, and you come in, and the Democrats' hostility to what you've undertaken is astonishing to behold. But it's part of the picture we're seeing in Twitter files.
Part of the picture.
Wow.
First off,
He's
the
not
idea that you're not getting paid is just absurd. I mean, is Elon Musk paying you directly? No.
No.
Is he giving you a valuable asset? I mean, give me a break. It's like, I got a big demand for more cupcakes. I've had to expand my bakers. It's a wash, but of course it's I'm doing the cupcakes at the inauguration of the president. I mean, that's like, give me a break.
No, I mean, you can tell, like, the way Taibbi, like, the thing about this is actually more significant than the 2008 financial crisis. Like, he knows that's stupid to everybody who knows anything besides Elon Musk.
Okay, so, all right. Their coverage of this is not as good as Andrea's, and they're full of themselves. They obviously think that they're very self-important. If they think Debbie Wasserman Schultz was actually watching their show. There's lots of people out there who oh, I did that wrong. Because it's covered. Okay, hold on. There's lots of people who have covered the story. I think her name is Cyber Demon, right? She just covered this story too. Crap. Let me see if I can find her channel on my subscriptions. Now you get to see like what I look at, right? Oh, here we go. Here she is. She's covering Nikki Haley right now, but let's take a look at her videos because she just covered this topic yesterday. And I think,
where's this person?
honestly, I think Andrea did a better job of covering this story.
They go by the name Matthew Taibbi. Now, multiple people, for whatever reason, have claimed that Matt Taibbi is like some frontline thinker You know, he's like really bright, and he's like, you know, he's anti-authority, right? He speaks truth to power, all these kinds of buzzwords and phrases. But of course, none of that is true.
Right.
Matt Taibbi, of course, decided to sell all of his credibility to Elon Musk for who knows how much money he was paid for the Twitter files. We don't really know. But he sold 100% of his credibility to Elon. He is now Elon's bitch boy. Who's a little beta.
And he actually stated in Congress that he didn't get any money for this, which is some bullshit. He obviously got something out of it. He has some sort of arrangement. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been spoon-fed this information to be the PR rep for Elon Musk.
Mail. Like, you ever see those, like, you know, like the little guy with the dog collar on, like, you know, on the ground, and like some guy holding the collar with like a bag full of cash. You know, that's basically Matt Taibbi and Elon Musk, right? He's the little doggy, you know, not a good doggy that's just, you know, they bark and they make fun noises and they play fetch, but like just really bad dog. And he was at a congressional hearing, and the thing about this clip that really boils my blood is that I am forced to give Debbie Wasserman Schultz credit for something.
Yeah.
This is not something I want to do. I don't want to come out here on my show and say that DWS did a good job. I don't want that. But I'm going to do it anyway because my dislike for Matt Taibbi is more nowadays than.
But can you see how she walks into this situation knowing exactly who Debbie Wasserman Schultz is? She's not struggling to remember her name. She is coming into the story with knowledge in her head, not notes, not talking points, where she has to like look at her notes to remember things. And that's the problem. That's the problem with the Majority Report, is that they don't know what they're talking about, and so they're constantly looking for notes and talking points because they don't have this information off the top of their head, and so they can't remember her name, they can't remember what her significance is. But Andrea walks into the situation knowing exactly who Debbie Wasserman Schultz is, and doesn't even need to explain it to her audience, because just through the tone of voice, she can show her audience, I know who this person is, I know what the problem is with her, and you do too. Because her audience is more informed than Sam Cedar's audience.
My dislike for Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So here's a clip that went viral on the internet. And let's just watch this exchange, okay?
Journalistic ethics and information sources. The Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics asserts that journalists should avoid political activities that can compromise integrity or credibility. Being a Republican witness today certainly casts a cloud over your objectivity. But a deeper concern that I have relates to the ethics of how journalists receive and present certain information. Journalists should avoid accepting spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion. Would you agree with that?
I think it depends.
Really? You wouldn't agree that a...
So first of all, again, the idea that you're going to respond to that with "it depends" is pretty fucking funny, right? Like, journalism is about uncovering truth. Journalists are in opposition to power by nature. If you consider yourself a journalist and you are doing a press conference on behalf of the powerful, that's not journalism.
By the way, notice the timestamps on this. Andrea posted her video 21 hours ago. The Majority Report posted their video 12 hours ago. So when they're saying, oh, Debbie Wasserman Schultz must have watched our show, That's unlikely because you guys are slow on the uptake. And more than likely, you're watching people like Andrea to get your talking points.
That's public relations for whoever you're giving public relations to. You know, there's PR firms out there, right? PR firms and news agencies and journalist outlets are not the same thing. Okay? So it does not depend. To correct Matthew Taibbi, does not depend.
Journalists should avoid spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion.
Congresswoman, I've done probably a dozen stories involving whistleblowers. Every reported story that I've ever done across 3 decades involves sources who have motives. Every time you do a story, you're making a balancing test between the public
reclaiming
interest.
my time. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I ask you this because before you became Elon Musk's hand-picked journalist, and pardon the oxymoron, you stated this on Joe Rogan's podcast about being spoon-fed information, and I quote, "I think that's true of any kind of journalism," and you'll see it behind me here. "I think that's true of any kind of journalism. Once you start getting handed things, then you've lost. They have you at that point, and you got to get out of that habit. You just can't cross that line." Do you still believe what you told Mr. Rogan? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Good. Now, you crossed that line with the Twitter files.
No.
Elon Musk, it's my time. Please do not interrupt me. Elon Musk spoon-fed you his cherry-picked information, which you must have suspected promotes a slanted viewpoint, or at the very least generates another right-wing conspiracy theory. You violated your own standard, and you appear to have benefited from it.
So, it's just... Again, I don't like Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I think she's, on a personal level, a bad person. I also think politically, she's pretty bad most of the time. But this one here, it's a banger. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a banger. Right? It's a banger. And again, you can just look at the Twitter files. You can see the Twitter files. You can look at them. The claim of the Twitter files is that Democrat politicians begged Twitter to delete things they didn't like. And then in the Twitter files, we found out that it wasn't actually Democratic politicians. It was a Democratic campaign for president, Joe Biden. And that campaign for president asked pornography, revenge pornography, of the presidential candidate's child, adult child, right? His kid, his son. That's all they asked to be taken down, was revenge porn of his adult son. Then, in the Twitter files, this was not marketed by them, and they probably failed to remove it. They should have removed this. But we also found out in the Twitter files that Donald Trump's campaign, but no, wait, not Donald Trump's campaign, the White House, you know, the executive branch of the United States government, the White House, I don't know if you know this, a campaign for president of someone who is not a sitting president is different than the White House. The White House, Donald J. Trump, Republican, by the way, not a Democrat, Republican in the White House, asked Twitter to remove tweets. One of them was calling Donald Trump, quote, a pussy-ass bitch. Donald Trump instructed the White House to instruct Twitter to delete that tweet. And that's not news, apparently.
Notice how Andrea gets right into the facts. Her video is only about 12 minutes long. And yet Sam and Emma have a 30-minute video that really doesn't cover as much information about the background of the story. And yet they are so full of themselves, they think Debbie Wasserman Schultz is coming to them for info? For real? If she wants info, she's going to be having her people look for people like Andrea who are covering the story. Because Andrea has a real take on it.
apparently. There was like a little footnote that they probably forgot to get rid of. So when they tried to market the Twitter files, the headlines were the exact opposite of what the actual information showed us. And so, by definition, this is a cherry-picked argument. By definition. Now again, they failed to pick the right amount of cherries, but it is a cherry-picked incident here, where their claim was that Democrats they have undue control over Twitter or whatever, and then they accidentally also posted that, no, actually, Democratic politicians are different than Democratic campaign people that are not elected representatives. So Democratic campaign workers actually asked them to take down revenge porn, which is already illegal in most states. Not most states, actually, but some states. And then also, on the other end, we found out that the White House, actual government, institution, whatever. But so that is, by all definitions, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is correct here. And Matt Taibbi is just the thing about Matt Taibbi that I really don't like.
I'm just going to stop here. I'll drop the links to both videos if you want to watch and compare. But I was on the phone for a long time last night with one of my organizing friends who is highly influenced by live streamers. And I asked her basically, you gotta use some caution with who you're watching, because some of the stuff that you say to me indicates that you're getting information that is inaccurate, right? Like, to my mind, there is nothing to watch on Jimmy Dore. There is nothing to watch on the Convo Couch. There is nothing to watch on Nico House. There is nothing to watch on Brianna Joy Gray, the whatever her Bad Faith podcast or whatever it is. Like, there's an entire ecosystem of live streamers that are doing the bidding for the Republican Party and trying to purport themselves as being leftists. And they're not. They're not leftists. Matt Taibbi came into that as a witness for the Republicans. That's because they're right-wing. These are right-wing plants that are within the leftist community to misinform and confuse and disrupt. And this is not helpful to us getting Medicare for all. It is not helpful for us getting a Green New Deal. It is not helpful for us to get the social programs that we're looking for and divert tax money into beefing those things up. And keep in mind, right now, the Republicans are trying to pull back Social Security and other programs that we have been paying into our entire lives. Every time you get paid as a W-2 employee, you're taxed for those programs. And that's because it's basically an insurance program for you, that when you do reach retirement age, you're entitled to not have to work anymore because you already paid into, you lost all that money throughout your entire life paying into an insurance program so that you can live out your older years without being overburdened by having to work every day. And the Republicans have put plants all over the fucking place to try and convince you that it's better if we don't have these programs that you've been paying into your entire lives. And it's even harder to see, like, the boomer generation who are benefiting from these programs say, well, yeah, let's get rid of it for our kids. Let's get rid of it for Gen X and Gen Z and the millennials. We get to benefit from it, but not you, right? Is that where we're going?